we do a game jam game, release it after 3 days of work, like only 3 days. And that's the first validation point. And then we got like 200,000 wishlists in a month. The quality of the game, how it is crafted or how interesting the idea is, will tell you nothing about how popular it will be.
This is a conversation with René Habermann, an indie game developer you might know from games such as Domekeeper or Planetenverteidigungskanonenkommandant. He's running a game studio called Bippinbits together with his wife, and he has some very interesting perspectives on how to make indie games that sell reliably.
I would rather spend half a year in vain than 2 years.
Yeah.
in vain. Person said, you don't need to like the game you're making. And I fundamentally disagree with this.
I'm a big fan of his perspective, so I'm excited to just sit down and nerd about game design.
I was thinking about if developers make a game and it flops or doesn't work out or doesn't enable them to do another game, why is that? There are 3 main things, like main causes. One's a very obvious one, that the game is unwanted, that there's basically no audience for a game, and that hits really many games. The second one was misaligned. And that is basically a game that was announced and people were kind of hyped for it, and then it got made. And when it released, people were really disappointed for some reason.
So we have unwanted and misaligned, right? What's the third one?
In my book, it's overdeveloped. I've seen some games that overdeveloped just means, okay, this game could have worked out if you just had not expanded the scope so much in some directions. Like it's a game that is probably well made. And for example, with a simple graphic style, it would have worked nearly equally well as with a sophisticated graphic style. But the sophisticated graphics cost so much money that the game really now can't be profitable because suddenly it needs to sell 100,000 units instead of 10,000 because it got so much more expensive to make. Like graphics are our prime suspect in this.
So would you say the strategy you should go for is you make it as minimal as possible and check what you get away with, essentially? You're like, if nobody complains, we'll leave it exactly as is.
That's a good summary. There's still a little bit of an art to it to find like this first good level. Because of course you can also make it way too simple and then no one cares. And if it would hit the right spot, like people would be interested, but you made it so simple that no one cares because it doesn't transport the fantasy in any way.
Okay.
Like it's not trivial. I guess you need to understand the game really well and the fantasy you are delivering on, and then think about what's important for this fantasy to arrive basically at the player, to work for the player.
Let's take another step back real quick. So we had as the 3 main problems, unwanted, misaligned, and overdeveloped.
Yeah.
Do you think there are essentially different strategies you have to deploy to avoid each one, or are there workflows that you can use to avoid all 3 of them at once?
Yeah, for us, a key thing is what we call validation points. That we basically, a validation point is a point where you get key feedback on the game, and this can inform how the rest of the development looks like. If you do that well, I think that helps avoid nearly all of the problems. There's still more nuance to each problem. But if it's only one thing, like the validation points for me have the biggest impact. And that can, and these for us at least, they come really fast. Like we do a game jam game, release it after 3 days of work, like only 3 days. And that's the first validation point. It's released now. Now we can see is it popular? Does it resonate with the players? Are they excited for it? Do they want more? And if not many people play it, or and not many people are super excited about this, like this validation point succeeded in telling us that this game is not very exciting and that we should not continue with this.
So in which order do you validate things? Do you validate fun first? Do you validate appeal first? Like which order do you validate things, or do you validate everything at once?
Everything at once, definitely. It's much more high level than this. It's like what at the end of the day, what I care about is, do people want to play this a lot? And with a lot, I don't mean do they want to play it for a super long time. I mean, do they have a strong desire to play this and play more of this? That's the only thing I really care about. And it would be totally fine if they want to play this way more because it's super fun. But it's also perfectly fine if it's not that fun, but the appeal of this is so high that they kind of want to stay in this. So we do have, I think we have two gem games that are representatives of one is super fun and one is super appealing, I think. And the fun one, I think, is Domekeeper, because it started also as a gem game, and it's very simple in a way. When I shared screenshots, people were not overly hyped about this, but they play it and then they have fun and then they enjoy it and they like it. That was definitely a game that worked over fun. And then we have another gem game on our itch site also released. It's called Ravenhall, and it's basically a tycoon game, but you have this small little tower and you manage these birds that are delivering packages. And I think that's a game that the tycoon part is nice, but it feels like it's secondary to the appeal and to the fantasy and to the coziness of the experience.
So what you're looking for is just how excited are people about this game, and you almost don't really care about why. It's like, maybe maybe some games are appealing and that's why they work. Maybe some games are just super fun and that's why they work. And all you really care about is, are people excited to play this and play more of this?
As a first step, definitely. Like that's the key thing. The game can even be very appealing and very fun for very few people. But that's also something, of course, we care about. Like if you make a game that in the end 100 people will buy and love, that's not sustainable. So we need a game that sells at least, 20,000 units or something like that. But we still need to really, really well understand what they like about. So we do need to understand, do they like the gameplay so much? Or do they like the cozy atmosphere so much? Or the writing or the characters? We need to really understand to the detail as much as we can what people appreciate about it.
Okay, so saying you don't care was maybe not the right way to put that. It's like you check for how excited people are for it, and of course you try to understand why, so that maybe you can make up for the weaknesses or play into your strengths to the best of your ability.
Yes, so for the validation point itself, it doesn't matter too much. But then if we see people are super hyped about it for whatever reason, and we say, okay, then let's see if we can continue this game and expand the prototype. Then we really need to know what's cool about it. But usually it's not an accident that we know first what should be cool about this about the game. Then we make the game, and then we just basically confirm what we expected. Like, okay, yeah, this is just a fun to play game, something like that.
I think there's an interesting difference between our approaches that maybe we can dig into a bit, because I think I would be really worried to make a game that I'm not sure is appealing enough. Is that something you're equally worried about, or are you like, it's very, very fun, it's not that appealing, let's make it anyway? How do you think about that?
What's an appealing game?
So an appealing game, I define appeal as like the pull factor that you get when you look at a screenshot of a game, for example. You look at a screenshot, and without anybody explaining the game to you, you're like, I want to play this. This looks interesting.
Yeah, in that sense, I think having an appealing game is great. And you probably can make a game that's already fun way more appealing. Like, for example, if Thronefall was ugly and didn't have a nice style, it would not be as appealing. But Thronefall does have a really consistent and nice style. On top of the gameplay that looks immediately fun, so I think it works. I'm not sure. Do you think Domekeeper is a game with high appeal or not?
That's what I find interesting, because intuitively I would have said yes, it is quite appealing, but it contradicts what you said, is that people weren't reacting to screenshots very much. So I'm torn, and obviously there's a hindsight bias here, so very, very difficult to say. But I think that, the dome, it has a unique shape, so it's very recognizable. When you see it on a screenshot, you instantly recognize Domekeeper, and then you also have, what's appeal is not just graphics, it's not just how visually, how great is visuals, also what happens in the screenshots. It's the fantasy and the lore of what happens there. For example, if you have a screenshot of a little character digging into the ground, then that has the appeal of exploration, of like the intrigue of digging into different directions. And those are all things that you can potentially derive from a simple screenshot like that. Or if you show the dome with a couple of attachments, and you already get your mind going of, ooh, what else can I attach to this dome? How can I defend this? So there's a lot of nuance in appeal as well. I personally, I would have said Domekeeper looks like an appealing game to me personally, yes.
Yeah, it might be. It might be that just my marketing attempts were not great. It might also be that my marketing attempts back when I shared this were doing not too bad, but still like getting 30 likes on a Twitter post is not. It doesn't look like it's doing super well or something like that. So yeah, okay. Then appeal is definitely a quite a broad concept in that sense. And then I would never make an unappealing game because that's one thing you mentioned that I find absolutely key, which is the fantasy.
Yeah.
And in my experience, or from what I can see, that's a core driver of people wanting to play this because they see the fantasy and they like it. They want to experience this, and that's also, I think, very much why I make games, because I want to create these little worlds where you can experience something that you cannot experience in the real life, and live this sort of fantasy that's interesting.
It's difficult to talk about because there are so many like definition mismatches. We don't have a very good shared terminology for all of these things. But okay, I see. So you would not make a game that's not appealing. You would try to have something that works on a screenshot.
Yeah, ideally, yes. But also coming from Domekeeper, it's still like the jam game looked also a lot simpler than the release game. It had quite primitive pixel art in a way. It had still an interesting color scheme, and it was maximizing what like the real estate that it had. But people weren't jumping onto this in the thousands or something like that. But then when we released the demo, suddenly people found it fun and shared it, and then suddenly it blew up. So I kind of had this experience of having a game that is not appealing, where at least it feels like you can share arbitrary material of the game, and no one really cares, or just have too few people to make a commercial game out of this. But then have it released, have it be played by people, and people going really wild for it. And I think
so. Can you pinpoint what was it that made it go wild? Was it the Steam algorithm giving it visibility? Was it word of mouth between players? Was it the game doing well on YouTube, or where did the spark spread?
Yeah, it was definitely on YouTube. That YouTuber's Retromation was the first. He played it, and that a lot of people watched that and found, hey, like this looks like a fun game. I want to try it out. They tried the demo. They liked it. Then other YouTubers saw that the Retromation video was doing quite well comparatively, and then they also made videos on that, and that snowballed a ton.
Oh god, that is exactly what Gavin talked about, right? It's like if it does well with the content creators, then content creators will play it a lot.
Yeah, that's also that when I speak about validation points, that's also a point of validation that I take into consideration. Like, do people if you make a prototype and release it, are there any videos of this on YouTube? That's a good sign. And then I look at, okay, like what's the view count of this video? Is it higher than the average of this channel? If so, that's also a really good sign, because then it means people kind of were hooked throughout the video and watched it more than usual, and then YouTube kept recommending it to some more people. So that's definitely a really important bit.
I see. So one more possible interpretation of this could be that maybe the appeal of Domekeeper was not as high on screenshots as it was on video. Maybe you need a little more context to understand the appeal of the game. Maybe that was what was happening there.
It could be. I did make a lot of GIFs before that were quite representative. I also made a very crude trailer of this, which actually the Johan, the scout from Raw Fury, saw, and this made him like take note of the game. So at least it was he saw some appeal in that, I guess. So I don't think it was necessarily the moving image. I think it was. I have two examples. The Vampire Survivors like seeing that on a screenshot, I don't think anyone would have cared. The game has no appeal.
No.
But then people played it, and it was a lot of fun. And then like it gets played, and then people are like, this game doesn't look very appealing, but why do people keep playing it? It's kind of this mystery and this intrigue about, okay, the game looking like this must be so good to compensate that people are really, really hot for that. And the other example, like in some past talks, I for students and such, I mentioned that I feel like there are two types of games that you can make. One is the really appealing game, like Tiny Glade or Wandering Village, that you share on social media, that will be popular because it's such a nice and cozy fantasy that just vibes well with people, and people want to see more of that. And the other game, my example there was Potato, because also a screenshot of Potato, I don't think it looks like, you see that screenshot of this egg and this gray background, and you think like, oh yeah, this looks like an amazing game. I need to play this. It's a game I think that works way more through the gameplay. And so I think you have these types of games that will do well on screenshots and videos, but you also have these games that people kind of need to play to really get it, how great it is, that generally won't do super well on screenshots. And even for Potato, I'm not sure. I guess there are some ways you could make it appealing. Like, for example, if we stay in this genre, Halls of Torment did something good there. I think they created a lot of appeal, pushing into this retro Diablo 1 style, which immediately is appealing to a lot of people. So it's definitely possible. I'm not sure if it would have been better for Potato, because again, we come back to this. Potato looks so simple, which means it can create a ton of content very fast, and people are not sticking around for nice graphics. They are sticking around for build variety and great runs. So it's the question, like, where is the work? Where has the work they put into the game the greatest effect, I think?
For Vampire Survivors, I think obviously once the game's already big, you can say people play it because it's popular, but that's not really an explanation for how it got popular, right?
Oh yeah.
So I guess what I'm thinking for something like Vampire Survivors is more like word of mouth probably is more powerful than we expected. I can't really explain it any other way. I don't see this becoming a big thing like on Steam alone, just through Steam algorithm. I feel like it must have been word of mouth in some way. Or maybe the Steam algorithm tracks how long the people play the game for, and identified that people play this like for hours and hours, and then decided to promote it more, or something like that going on.
Yeah, I think it just needs like one influencer to kick off this like, if you have this snowballing effect that gets created by algorithms pushing a content, you basically just need one person at the top having a snowball and rolling it, starting to roll it, and the rest will kind of flow by itself. And we had the same with Retromation. Like, no one made a video on Dome. Oh, I guess that's unfair. There were some people, like tiny channels that made videos on Dome. But then Retromation was the first smaller or mid-sized channel, like with some thousands of viewers. And that was enough. Like, that was the spark. And then other people watched that space, right? And I think for Vampire Survivors, it might have been similar, that you just need one person to play it at the right time, or not necessarily the right time, but if you have one person to play it and for it to do well algorithmically, a lot of other people might jump in.
You know what I find very fascinating about this is because you said Domekeeper was essentially the same thing as what Gavin is trying to do with his strategy, but he has like a completely different approach to it. He has like, let's have some memory, like some recognizable characters, let's have good story, good tension arcs that YouTubers can leverage. And then you tell me like something like Domekeeper that has just like pure gameplay focused game, like not optimized for streamers or content creators intentionally from what I can tell. And did you just tell me that just did well on YouTube, and that's why a lot of content creators played it?
Yeah, Yeah,
I guess
sorry, go ahead.
The question I have for you, but I'm sure you were about to answer anyways. Why do you think why did Domekeeper work so well on YouTube?
That's a great question. I think, we can always try to make sense in retrospect about things that go well. But if we would know this, we could also sit, like before we release anything, we could also sit there and say, like, this will do well, and this won't do well. Because of course we have all the explanations in hindsight, right? And for me, that's the key thing. Like why we are also making many prototypes, because I feel like the quality of the game, how it is crafted, or how interesting the idea is, will tell you nothing about how popular it will be. So we kind of make these games and try to get validation, for example, by releasing them very, very quickly. And then we will see what works, and we don't need to understand exactly. So we definitely don't need to understand beforehand that it will do well. And then after it did well, we can understand what people like about it and do more of that. And then we can assume, okay, if people like this and we do more of what they like, then hopefully they will like the expanded game more. And for Domekeeper, what do you have an idea why it did well on YouTube?
I mean, what Gavin said was essentially like you need something that's easy to understand and that's also sort of a high stakes scenario. And I guess Domekeeper in a way fulfills those requirements, right? It's like high stakes because if you lose, it's game over. The run is over.
Yeah.
And there's sort of a tension, also a very well-designed tension curve that feels good to watch. With like there are waves of enemies. You have like moments of high tension, then you have moments of low tension where you go down and mine some more.
Yeah.
So I guess, but still, it's still not something you'd expect to do well. Honestly, I can't fully explain it.
Yeah, but that makes sense to me. Like it's fun to watch if it has these qualities, and it has these qualities because these qualities are also fun to play. Like it's like a thing is fun to play if you can get into it very easily, if you understand the goals and the circumstances really easily, and then if you do it, if you feel like you are challenged and there's something at stake here. Like that's also how you want to design the game to be fun. And by that logic, there's not really a thing like optimizing it for YouTube, at least in these qualities, because you probably want, not with every game genre, but with the games I'm making, for example, I'm doing that anyway, just from the game design side.
So when you optimize to just make a good game, you're usually optimizing to make it work well on for content creators, basically.
It depends a little bit on the type of game, I think.
Yeah.
Because if you make a visual novel or if you make a grand strategy game, that will be different. But for at least for these games, I think there's a high overlap in what makes it appealing to play and what makes it appealing to watch.
So, but your approach is not to like from the onset. You're like, I'm designing this for content creators. You're very much designing for players and testing how players react to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So generally, like the starting point of any game, I think, is also not necessarily for me that I think so much about the players. Like I don't think about who is going to play this, what demographic will they be, and what do they generally like in these genres. So I don't think about this at all. It can be very simple, like for PVKK. That's a very primitive sort of want that I wanted to tap into with this game, which is, okay, it's nice to press nice buttons and pull levers and this feeling, and then you have this cockpit and it's sort of complex. And you have all these buttons, and it's a little bit overwhelming if you look at it. But then also, there are people who can understand all of this. And very soon you will be one of these people to understand all this and control this complex machinery and listen to every crank and such. So that's very primitive. And at that point in time, I don't think about, okay, are there people who want to play this? How old are they? Where do they play their games? What games do they play? I'm not thinking about the players in at that stage, kind of.
You have an unsatisfied urge in mind and are like, if I have this urge, then more people have this urge. And And then you have maybe some validation points later to confirm if that's the case or not.
Yeah, I guess that's even one step too far. I mean, yes, and maybe not. So maybe it's exactly right. Like I definitely, sometimes I just have an urge and want to see that in the game. But very often, like the underlying base assumption is also, if I have a true and honest human emotion about something, I won't be the only one that feels like this. And I feel like that's the case for really a lot of things. Because as much as we think ourselves super individual and unique, usually there are a million people like us. So
that's true. But I think it's dangerous to maybe derive advice like just make something you like from this, right? Because you still have to check, is there something like this out there at least? Like be careful not to make something that exists already, or be careful not to make a worse version of something that exists already, right?
Yeah, but I wonder if it's starting from this really simple primitive point. I feel like the risk of making something that already exists is not too high. And then I found whenever there's something that's similar to what I was thinking, it's still different enough that my idea, my version of this has room to stand on. And what I see much more with game developers is they see like, they see a game they like and then are thinking, okay, I want to make this game, but with this twist and this change. Mm-hmm. So they are much closer usually thinking about other games and that I want to make something like Slay the Spire, but in my case, we are not going up a tower, but down a dungeon. So something like that.
So what about just make a game you enjoy? Do you agree with in terms of game dev advice, and what do you disagree with?
It depends on what making that is. Spend 3 days on a game you want to play? Yeah, absolutely. Spend 2 years on a game you want to play without ever bothering if anyone else wants to play it? No, don't do that. And so for me, that's the beauty of validating super early and to have these prototypes that are also released, is you can be really playful and experimental, and you will see very quickly if someone else likes it. And spending 3 days or a week on a prototype is not a bad investment in that it will ruin you if this prototype does not work out. Mm-hmm. It should not, at least.
Do you think there's a difference between starting from a different game you like and basically saying, I want to make a game like, and saying you have a specific feeling or fantasy in mind and making a game from there? Because there are different, like basically what I'm getting at is there are different approaches to make a game that you want to play, right? There's the approach of make something like the games I enjoy, or make something I would enjoy that there aren't any games like this. There are probably even more ways to approach this.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference there. And I think there's also a danger there, because the most common thing I've seen and heard before is that people take a game they like and they want to add to it. Basically make this game, but bigger and cooler and better. And that's usually not a good idea as an indie developer, because the games you like are often either small teams that worked incredibly long on something, or that like really big teams, like 20 people teams. And I don't it's definitely harder. Like I think it's also easier in a way to take an existing game and just change it, which is why this is also popular. And that's also how I thought about games in the past. I always looked to a game I like, and then kind of thought about my version of this. Mm-hmm. But if it's not starting from another game, you kind of have this blank canvas, and that enables you to also strip out more of the things you might not need for this game. So it's a kind of the blank canvas is way more difficult to handle in a way, because you need to think about the whole and you don't have as much established stuff, but it also allows you to deviate more. But I think depending on what you feel comfortable with, it's also a perfectly fine starting point to take another game and make a version of that. But I would be super careful with adding to any version. I would always think about subtracting from a game I already know. Yeah, I do have some concepts that are exactly like that. That are more about, for example, with a grand strategy game. I really want to make a grand strategy game, but like Europa Universalis, but not with that scope. I want to take what's interesting and fun about this and bring it down to something really, really small, but have the same dynamic. And you have, and later I found out there are already games like that, at least to a degree, like Territorial.io, which is, if you take the grand strategy and strip it down as far as it's possible, you get this game. And it has really interesting dynamics. And I think that's a viable and interesting approach as an indie dev also.
So taking something away can be a feature.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are a lot of games that are interesting that did exactly that took something away. Like Territorial. It's a popular game. It's really interesting in its dynamics. It's a game that's like makeable as a solo dev also, which is not the case for a proper grand strategy game like Europa Universalis. You couldn't make that game solo. I think. I hope.
Sure.
Like it would be a little bit crazy.
Also, I guess what I also think is that obviously taking things away creates new room to add things, right? So that's exactly what you said. You can't just go, I'll make this game, but I'll add a bunch of things to it. That's gonna be out of scope. So if you want to add things, then you need to find other things to remove. And this is 100% what we did with all of our games. Like Islanders was basically, what if we take a city builder and reduce it to its core? Then Thronefall was, what if we take a strategy game and reduce it to its core? And then because you reduce it down so much, then you have some room to play with to add other things you like and you find interesting.
Yeah, for me, the guiding principle also in that is what's the player experience I want to have? Like what's the fantasy and what should the player experience in this? And that's a very different goal set than thinking about a feature list. Because sometimes a lot of projects to think more about features, and you see that in their content description. Like it's not what's the fantasy, what's your experience in this game? It's, hey, we have 40 levels. And we have 3 difficulty modes and a campaign, and that's the game. That's something like that. I like experience goals in that sense much more than feature lists.
So we were still about the validation point. So maybe what we can do is let's simulate a new project and let's see which validation points we walk through. So let's say maybe to begin with, there's one very interesting strategy that you use to sort of breed new ideas before you dive into them. Sometimes I already know your sort of answers to this, but there's one thing I would just like to document for the viewers because it's quite interesting, and that is what you do with itch.io and game jams. Can you tell us a little bit about that real quick?
Yeah. So generally, we love game jams and participate in them a lot. And there, of course, we make a game in 3 days and then release it, and then we can compare these games between each other and see like, okay, this game we just made, no one basically wants to play this. No one cares about this game. And then we make another game in half a year later that's not better in quality. And then suddenly 100 times as many people are engaging with this. And we now have nearly 20 games on itch. And with that, I created something I call for these itch games engagement rating, where I just calculate how many people need to play this game for one for one rating on this game, and for one collection, which is some sort of arbitrary list people can make. And then I can see like, okay, this game, 500 people need to play it before one of those puts it on a collection. And on this game, 30 people play it, and then one collection comes. The game is put into one collection. And that's, again, data and interpretation. But I feel like, okay, if you put it in a list, you want to keep it for later. So the game was meaningful to you when you played it. And if I have a game that's way more meaningful to you when you played it, there's something interesting about it. There's something good. It could be fun. It could be appeal. It's probably a mix of both, right? Because both kind of need to work, I think. And that tells us a lot. And sometimes we also have games with high engagement, but very low low player counts. then we know, okay, the game itself is good, but it doesn't sell itself in any interesting way. Maybe it doesn't have a fantasy that's interesting that people want to click at. Maybe it has the wrong graphic style. Can also be like that. And we also have games that have a higher player count, but low engagement. So these are, I think most commonly, these are simply abrasive to a degree. Like they are not very friendly for a first-time user. And that's sometimes the byproduct out of having a too big a scope for 3 days. That can happen.
Yeah. So essentially, to summarize, you're using itch.io as your prototype testing ground.
Yeah.
And you see which ideas work, and then Domekeeper was created like that.
Yeah. But you also mentioned, okay, where do the ideas come from? And that's a step before that, I guess. Because sometimes, there's a theme for the jam, and I'll think of a new concept, and then we make that. And that was the case for Domekeeper, where we actually tried to not be clever, not make an innovative game, and try to make the simplest game we could think of for the theme. Because in the jam before that, I had this kind of more sophisticated, high-level concept that I was interested in. It's more about behavior and feeling. It basically was a game about learning the layout of a city. Like you played GTA back in the days, or games like Morrowind, where you didn't have quick travel, so you kind of over time really got intimately familiar with the landscape and where you needed to go. And I wanted to recreate this. And this game, no one cared for this game. So, but then after that we were like, yeah, okay, last game no one cared for. Let's make just something that's simple that we can polish. That's fun.
Yeah. That's one of those bitter lessons in game development that sometimes it's just, you don't need to get fancy, you just need to do something that works and do it well.
Yeah, so personally, I don't like that flopped game less than Domekeeper. It's still for me like I love all my babies, so to say. Like all these games have their place, and I enjoy making them, and I enjoy having them. I guess it comes down to why do you make these games? Is it so as many people as possible can play this? Or is it more of I was interested in this concept and wanted to explore it, and now I did it, and now I can see, it works like I imagined, and it's cool, but it's not for many people. Very few people appreciate this.
Nobody can argue with I want to, right? If you say, why are you make this? Because I want to. The argument is over. It's like sure. But if you want to make something that works with a larger audience or with a niche audience or something, or if you have more specific requirements, then that's where the discussion becomes interesting, right? Because if you can make whatever you want, if you want to.
But for me, the idea of wanting to make something for many people, it's not part of the design process, or like of the early design process in that sense, or of the prototyping. It's more like I'm making 10 games that I'm interested in, that I like, 10 prototypes, and hopefully there's one or two among those that resonate really well with a lot of people. So the production can have basically commercial legs, because otherwise, we couldn't make a 1-year project out of a game that 500 people want to have.
But what's very cool about this process is that it basically ensures 100% that whatever project you make is something that you're passionate about, and you'll never end up with something that you're like, okay, I have to make this because it's popular. It's like all of the ideas you start with were things you cared about to begin with, and then you just go with the one that worked the best.
Yes, that's really important. And sometimes it's like after finishing a prototype, my desire to continue this is really high, and sometimes it's way lower, because I feel like, this was really tough, and I can see all the problems in the concept now, and it will be tough to get right. So there's a big difference. But usually in those games, those games are also not popular. And then it's very easy to say like, okay, it was a cool prototype, but let's forget about this. But I do think it's really important to really love the game that you are making. I watched your interview with Gavin also, and I found it his approach is super interesting, because it's so highly analytical. But it's also a little bit sad that he lost the joy of making, basically, in that.
Yeah, but I read one comment that I think was also very true, is that there are different things to enjoy about game development. And I think one thing that's also very much enjoyable is exactly this theory crafting and architecting and tryharding in a way. That too can be very enjoyable. So I think it's not entirely fair to disregard it as soulless or something. It's like you can derive a different kind of enjoyment from it. But obviously, as mentioned, you can't. If somebody says they have a certain feeling about it, there's no arguing with that. If he's like, I don't really enjoy this much anymore. Yeah. Okay, it is what it is, right?
Yeah,
but
I think it's two different things. One is a game in itself, kind of. How can I make a thing that's super popular? How can I engineer it into something hyped and loved? That's a thing, as you said, like theory crafting. That feels like a game in itself. And the other aspect is the craft in itself, like sitting down and making the thing. And talking about the thing with your team and guiding them as needed, and that's like ideally you can have fun in both, and you can like both.
Yeah,
and I did hear it recently on a talk I attended where the person said you don't need to like the game you're making, and I fundamentally disagree with this. So I think you really need to like the game you're making.
I can understand the perspective a little bit. Because I have this feeling sometimes where it's like I'm playing this meta game of I'm trying to be as good of a designer as I possibly can be, and I can derive enjoyment from that. And so if somebody hands me a random game that I don't usually make games like this at all. Somebody hands me a horror game or something that's like not very system heavy, something I don't usually enjoy working on, and it's just like, here, balance this, tune this to make it more fun. Then basically the fun for me comes from saying, challenge accepted, and buckling down and trying to figure it out. So I have this, there's a little bit of this competitive urge that I think can make almost any challenge enjoyable for me, any game design challenge. But I wonder if it's still a little bit of a different thing if you truly want to work on a project for several years and put in your all over that entire time span, then maybe you need something that really fuels you in a lot of different ways and not just in this competitive way.
Yeah, I think that's really the core of it. I think even in a game you don't especially like, you can find things to do that you enjoy. But the game, like finishing a game and making it good, is so hard, and there's a lot of grueling work also, and repetitive work, and filling it with content. That's so much work, and iterating and playtesting and fixing bugs. Like you need to have, I feel like if you want to keep enjoying this, you need to have really positive feelings about the game. That being said, like I do really like Domekeeper. Don't get me wrong, but I haven't played mining games before. Like it's not a genre I enjoy in general. And all the games that people reference, I barely played, or I played after they got mentioned, so to see what I can steal from them, basically.
Okay, let's go back to our little thought experiment. Let's say, so to come up with our game idea, maybe we just do what you suggested. We come up with a bunch of things we personally enjoy working on. We put them out there, like little mini versions of them, and we just see which of them do well. Like we see which of them get picked up on YouTube, which of them get good engagement. Yeah. And then we say like, okay, this looks promising. What do we do now?
Then it's basically both figuring out, this is a 3-day game with half an hour of playtime maybe. How can this be a 10-hour game? Or how can this be a replayable game that's fun to replay for 30 hours? Basically expanding the concept into something that's worthy of a full game. Like you can end up with a $30 game or a $5 game. Like that's also a big difference in expanding the game. But also depending on the game and how far you want to deviate, it can be basically an incredibly difficult task to expand this and make bigger. For Domekeeper especially, like I felt like the prototype was already representative of what the game should be, and I just need more of this. And the game already works, and now I need not break the game. Like I cannot add systems and stuff to it until this game loop suddenly does not work anymore. Basically, I just need more content and more game modes and more monsters, and so more reasons to replay. I must keep what's working already. That was the goal. And
so
in
terms of validation points, the first validation point was sort of maybe the pre-selection phase where the idea went up against all of these other prototypes and ideas we had, and we were like, okay, this validation point is passed. What is the next validation point after it? Is it the demo? Is it the trailer?
No, it's much earlier in a way. Like it would be the first playable of the expanded prototype, and that usually is way before a demo. That's basically okay. I created the first hour of the full game. Or the first 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever. And now I'll have a small Discord community, for example, who can playtest this. And there's also some iteration happening before that, where just I as a developer or we as a team, we iterate on the mechanics and like we playtest together, eat our own dog food basically and iterate until it tastes nice. And then we can do friends and family tests. Like it really depends on the concept. And eventually it will reach a Discord community. And that's so a playtest community. And that's another validation point, because that's not so much about finding out if 1 million people want to play this. It's more about really nailing down what people are excited about. Is the direction good? Is like, where are friction points? Where are systems we thought would be interesting that no one enjoys? Kind of figuring out these. So basically this is a key moment to avoid a misaligned game where you had this promise.
I was just about to say, we can make the arc back to the very beginning there. Like we have tested for desired, so we have avoided undesired by picking something that people desire. And now I guess the next thing to do is to make sure it doesn't end up misaligned.
Yeah. Also, overproduced is also part of this. Like what's like in this part, we would usually also figure out, okay, what's a sensible production pipeline for assets? How fancy can we make that stuff? Do we have in-sprite animation, or do we just use squash and stretch or something like that? Like how simple can we make it without hurting this player experience? And that's a big part of it. And then that's a validation point, right? So that it's not necessarily public, but you can also validate with a community. And then it really depends. Like for some games, the next step for me would be to release a demo where I feel like, okay, this is a game where it's more about you must experience it to really appreciate what it is. Then I would try to release a demo, and that demo should be ideally released within half a year after starting the production on this. Okay. So not super long, because I want to know as soon as possible that people want to play this and it works, or people don't want to play this. Like I would rather spend half a year in vain than 2 years.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I think there are also some conflicting strategies. For example, I think if you ask some marketing people, they will say, launch your demo shortly before Steam Next Fest so that you get the most momentum for Steam Next Fest. But obviously that might be way, way later. That might be literally 2 years later than what you're suggesting.
I mean, Steam Next Fest is 3 times a year. So you should be able to find a slot that's not too bad for you usually. But
fair. But then it might be that your demo is still out very, very early, and it might still be a while before your full game comes out. Right? Yeah,
I mean, you can. What you also can do, you can release a demo at a basically arbitrary point and see if it does okay. And if it does okay, you take it off, you continue the game for a year, and then work towards release. And then you make a new demo that's super shiny and cool, and that demo participates in Steam Next Fest.
So you can have a validation demo and a Steam Next Fest demo. Double dip.
With Domekeeper, we actually had that. We had a demo of basically the expanded prototype that still looked really like the jam game. And that was the demo that took off. But that was not the demo that was representative of the final game, because we also had this big art rework. So we had, a few months later, we had basically the proper demo out, and that participated in Steam Next Fest.
Okay. Yeah, okay, fair.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I said there were 2 ways now from this, like demo. But instead of releasing a demo, what's also a sensible approach for many games, I think, is doing an announcement. Make a nice trailer, have good visuals. In the talk I made, I called it the core fancy. Like the core of the game is ready and it looks fancy enough to show off. And that can really be the basis of the announcement. You don't need a vertical slice for that necessarily. And then
you need a core fancy.
Yeah, it's a strange term. I'm not sure of. Okay, yeah, but if the announcement goes really well, you already have this as a big validation point, and then you don't need to rush out the demo. And that's exactly how it went for PVKK for us. Like we made this. I didn't want to do an announcement at all at first, but then people were like, yeah, maybe it's a good idea. Like marketing people, and I thought, yeah, it's not hard to do an announcement and the game looks nice, so let's do it. And we hoped for, like, if it would go really, really well, we would get 10,000 wishlists out of the announcement, which would be amazing because it's not a known IP and it's a strange game. And then we got like 200,000 wishlists in a month or something like that from the announcement.
By the way, if you're watching this, you have to check out the store page. Like it's a really strange game. Like getting 200,000 wish lists, like from a trailer or from an announcement. That's fascinating. So, but this time it was not YouTube content creators that got you those wish lists. It was where did those wish lists come from?
For PVKK? Yeah. Basically, I need to think if I'm not forgetting anything. So essentially, we had the announcement trailer, and that just got a ton of views on YouTube, and it got reposted on some trailer YouTube channels. It got featured by IGN. That doesn't mean too much because most videos releasing, like IGN does like 50 videos a day, and many of them have 10 to 20,000 views. But some really go off because they have a super high potential reach. But then the video itself must be the carrier of pushing this. And so I think we just had a really good trailer, and people saw that. And then the reason this was so popular because people resonated so much with the fantasy and the concept. Like that was an incredible driver for this getting shared. What also helped, I think, is the strange name of the game. Because it's called Planetenverteidigungskanonenkommandant, which is very easy for a German to say, but not for anyone else. So, and that caused a lot of people to jump to the comments and make fun of the name. And I think it wasn't engineered like that. We just did it because we thought it is stupid and funny. And other people thought so too. Hey, this is stupid and funny. But what happened then is also that I think at least the engagement on these videos would probably be really high in terms of how many people leave comments and engage with those comments. Because they suddenly have something they can talk about in the comments, something that's very easy to mention.
It's a memorable way. It's a memorable name, even though it's like impossible to pronounce for non-Germans.
Yeah.
That very long name.
And, we did have a lot of fun with Gamescom. We made pins for PVKK. And we had the idea of making a really stupid pin also. And I also brought it to Gamescom, telling everyone I spoke to I said, we have the most stupid pin ever. And it was basically Planetenverteidigungskanonenkommandant in like one long word written as a pin. And this pin got incredibly popular and in demand. Like people were writing us, hey, can we get these pins? I heard you have these super cool pins. And there's all these things we did that we just found funny and stupid in a way that suddenly resonated a lot with people.
Okay. But just to be clear, it's not a meme game at all, right? It's a very... Yeah. I think it's extremely appealing, and I think what also helps it is that it's a kind of appeal that hasn't been exploited a lot yet.
Yeah.
Like this playing with big complex machinery, that is a strong pull factor, and I don't think I know of any games off the top of my head that really do that. There are probably some, but it's like...
I think you have plenty of games, but not necessarily that work like that. For us, it was also really tough to just find market comparables to PVKK, like games similar to PVKK, just to estimate, okay, could this do well? Like we didn't really find anything. Like there's very little in that regard. You have a game like High Fleet, which shares a lot of the aesthetic. But you also have like recently a game released called Roadcraft, where you just drive it's basically a building simulation game, like a snow runner, mud runner, where you drive these big vehicles and just build roads. And there you also have this fantasy of this big machinery, But PVKK is also a lot of other things where it's not necessarily only about big machinery, but also this joy of cockpits and this playfulness also in that.
But it is essentially the appeal of a simulation game, right? Simulation games, for some reason, are also extremely popular, like Flight Simulator, Farming Simulator, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And you're kind of dipping into that, but with a made-up machine.
Yeah, that's for sure. But it also gets the, I would say, Bippinbits treatment. I hope it's not pretentious. Yeah, it just means for me, we make it very accessible. Just like Domekeeper. I think why Domekeeper also worked well is because you can launch it and you are immediately in the game and you are immediately playing the game. Yeah. You are not doing a tutorial. You are not learning. The game is not telling you how to play this. You get thrown into this and you, it feels like you just naturally learn it. And that's carefully crafted. This experience, it's way more work than just the game going pop up and telling you how this works. And we also do that from time to time in Dome. But with PVKK, we do the same. Like the whole complex machinery you see, we iterated a lot to get it to the spot where you can just sit down and bit by bit learn how this works without needing a manual or something like that.
Yeah, do you need to learn basically the entire machinery once you start playing? Or is it like different parts of the machinery become important basically one after another? And it
essentially starts as simple as possible, and then new bits of the machinery get introduced. So you don't have the full machinery initially, just a subset, and then you get upgrades, you install them, and more things to play with. So that's okay. That's I feel like that's a difference to a lot of simulation games. That we make it really accessible in the sense that it's easy to learn, relatively easy to learn. Mm-hmm. And it's more about quite direct fun than about simulating the reality of being a PVKK.
Right. But then if somebody turns into a random stream of somebody playing, then it looks like they're operating this complex machine and like still has that intrigue once they're in there.
I think a related genre is like these U-boat games where you would drive 2 hours to shoot one torpedo. And that's really the simulation thing where you would really drive through the Atlantic for half an hour and while doing nothing, just keeping your eyes open. Or people playing Flight Simulator and doing a real-time flight from the USA to Europe or something like that for 8 hours. That's a big difference. We would do that with PVKK.
Yeah. Okay, I'm wondering if we still need to finish the story arc with validation points. So you say we were like the validation points were like either a demo or a press announcement. Are there any validation points after this, or are we now just fully locked into finishing this? We were like, okay, we got 200,000 wish lists. Let's just finish this damn thing. Or is there anything else we need to validate?
I mean, if you do the announcement, you get one more with the demo, but it's hopefully not important anymore. Because throughout development, we still continue playtests and we still continue first-time user experience tests. We get every few months, maybe every 8 weeks or so, we get new players in who have never seen the game, who would get to try the game, and we can see, okay, does it still work for new players? How do they feel about it? But then it's more about production and also staying aligned to what's fun for the players and not drifting off into some strange corner. And the nice thing about this is ideally this is done in half a year and then you have a fully validated project and then you can spend 2 years or 3 years if you want on this. But you'd never have this fear of this not working out, hopefully.
But how old was PVKK when it got 200,000 wish lists? Was it half a year old or was it older than that?
At most half a year, and it's around half a year work for a full-time equivalent of one person. So it's not a 1.5 person at most. Like, it's not a lot of effort. It's a lot of passionate work that went into this. I don't want to diminish that. That's for sure. But for the comparing to what the full production of it is, for example, we had this validation very early still.
What do you do if you fail one of the validation points And even more importantly, what if you're not sure? If it's like so, what would you do in those kind of cases?
Yeah. That's also a good question. Like, we didn't have a game yet that we brought beyond the prototype state that then failed the demo or something like that. We have a game in development right now that I love very dearly, where I fear this day of validating the demo, because if it turns out badly, I would have to kill the project. Like that's the consequence of this. So either it's killing the project because we thought it was cool, but we found out too few people are interested in this, or we need to really dig deep, understand what's not working about this, and do basically a pivot, do some major change to the game that could turn it around completely. And if we are not doing that, we have to stop the project. But the vast majority of games stop at the prototype, like the 3-day stage, because Domekeeper was our 10th game jam game. All 9 before that basically did not deliver great numbers that would warrant a big production or anything, or be a really positive validation point. And then after Dome, our hit rate got definitely higher. Okay. But that still means of the 9 games that we did afterwards, I think there are 2 or 3 that feel like really safe bets. And then you have again 2 or 3 that do show really good numbers, but are also complicated for some reason. Maybe because they are difficult to expand into a full game, or they don't fit our core skills really well, or the numbers are questionable, but they are still like 10 times of what the bad games have.
So you say if it goes poorly, you'd obviously just kill the project. But what do you do if it goes so, or you're not entirely sure, or you don't have any reference points? Let's, for example, say, what would be a so amount of wish lists to get from a demo? Let's say something like 15,000, and you're not sure, is that good? Is that bad? What do we do from here?
Yeah, that's a good point. So usually before releasing the demo, I should have an idea about what's my kind of threshold where I consider this failed, where I consider it a big success, or where it's in the middle. And what's really a key thing about the validation points is also that they should inform the scope of the next stage until the next validation point. So if I have an itch game that gets played by 1 billion people, which is no itch game ever, but supposing the validation point is enormous, then I might feel good also taking a year until the demo, because I have such a high validation. So that might still be okay. And if I release a demo and the demo is not doing super well, but also not super bad, that tells me I probably should not take 2 years to make the rest of the game. But I should maybe, if I took half a year until the demo, I should look into, okay, with this wish list now, what do I expect how this develops? A conservative estimate. And then I can roughly see, okay, maybe this game will do $100,000. And then I should roughly scope that it should not cost way more than this. And then maybe I thought I would want to work on it for 2 more years, but then the validation is so small that I need to strip it down to half a year and release it for cheap. Like that can definitely be a consequence. And I mean, in that time, it can still happen that suddenly it picks up for whatever reason, or you have an update to the demo that makes it so much more interesting and then go better. But yeah, changing the scope according to how much validation you got, I think is a really key thing for us.
Okay, so if I get so feedback, like not enough to go all in on the project, but not enough to cancel, or not little enough to cancel the project, then maybe what I would do is maybe firstly try to shift direction a little bit, maybe try a bit of a different angle, and maybe also scope down a bit, make it a bit smaller.
Yeah, I'm slightly careful with shifting direction in the sense, like I would need a strong feeling about, okay, there's part of a game that's true to the game and super popular, and a part that's not popular. Then I might focus more on that part that's popular. But generally, I would not bend a game way too much or in an extreme way to fit something that I think has more promise. I mean, it can work, Fortnite did it, and like the craziest pivot of all time, probably.
Yeah.
But for me, it's at the beginning of the project, I had this idea about what the player experience of this is, and if I pivot really a lot, then I would need to pivot into a game that I also really like, or I just make something else.
Yeah,
like it feels like a 3-day prototype investment. Like that's doable a few times over.
I guess the problem with shifting gears too much is also that you invalidate your previous validation points, right? You're not sure if what you validated in the past still holds true for your changed concepts.
Yeah, that's a good point also. And it's also one thing we didn't speak about. I feel like that's a learning for us, or a realization that we carry now for quite some time, is we have to make games that fit the team first, instead of having basically a concept that we find really cool, but are not really equipped to make. We can always shift a little, and we can also challenge us to a degree, but it would not be possible for us to, even if we have a great idea, or it would not be a good fit, to make a visual novel, because we are not a writer-heavy team. So we should not make this. And a pivot also needs to happen within the constraints of what the team can actually do and what fits the team.
That's one of the advantages as well with your prototyping approach, with just participating in game jams and so on, is that you probably make these prototypes as a team, right?
Yeah.
So that forces you to make something that the team is equipped to make.
That's a good point. I haven't thought about this before. That's a good point. And I guess even if the team is not really well equipped to make this prototype, the prototype will also not get popular, because it's not a good game that comes out of this usually. Yeah,
fair. Okay, then let's maybe dive into one more topic that I'm itching to ask you about, and that is this entire business, growing an indie studio. Can you walk me real quick about what your arc was there? So you started as a solo developer, or did you start as a team with your wife?
Basically, I started making games with my wife back then. She was my girlfriend in 2012. And then it took us 5 years of meddling with some projects that were always overscoped. We never released something, and then we thought, okay, these game jams sound nice. Let's try a game jam, because we struggled with releasing and finishing anything. And that's what we did. That was 2017. And then in 2021, we made the Domekeeper game jam game, basically. We were still 2 people. And then we worked with freelancers on Dome. Like that was like a huge amount. Like it added up to maybe 1.5 full-time equivalents of work, basically. So in case anyone is not familiar with FTE, full-time equivalent, it's basically if you have 4 people that work like a quarter of their week, you basically have 1 more person. So you just add up the fractions of how everyone is involved. So until release, we were maybe 3.5 people with Domekeeper, and we had 9 months of production. So it was a really short project also until release. So release was also 2022. And then in 2023, we hired 2 people, I think. 2024, we hired 3 people. And in 2025, I hired 1 person. And of these hires, also two didn't stay at Bippinbits for different reasons, but also like just the involvement of the freelancers got way more. So right now we are 7 like full-time employees, a few smaller employees, but also roughly the same amount of freelancers in full-time equivalents. So right now we are like 18 people. So it's really
18 people or 18 full-time equivalents?
18 full-time equivalents over 30 people maybe. And then you also have the publishers being involved, and we have external biz dev. So it's quite a lot now. Okay,
wow, that's quite a lot bigger than I expected. And also sounds a bit like almost an exponential growth curve, right?
Yeah, I added this up recently.
Not that long ago.
I didn't realize we were this many now. But I had the habit of basically starting side projects. And so right now we do have 4 games in development in parallel. And on some games we have basically multiple projects where it's about, Domekeeper getting multiplayer, Domekeeper coming to consoles, Domekeeper maybe happening on mobile. And on PVKK, it's like this game, like we are doing this fancy Gamescom build where we basically have the real life, where we have a real life console that's more than 2 meters wide and 300 kilos heavy replica of the in-game thing, and bring that to Gamescom. Like that's a project also. That's separate from the core game development.
Yeah.
And we have more of these, so it's quite a lot.
So what's it like working with your wife, and how do you split the workload there? Does she do art stuff, or what does she do? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for Domekeeper, she did most of the art. That's her specialty, basically. 2D pixel art is where she is most comfortable with. And then for Dome, I did all the rest except the audio. So design, programming, production, marketing. Yeah, these are the key things. But we also had a sound designer. We had a composer. But then I also had someone as a basically tech artist, because I'm not good with that, for all the effects and shaders and such. And then we hired someone just to do icons for the game, because we realized we had like 150 upgrade icons, and that's 1 or 2 months of work. That's in a 9-month production. That's really bad. And then we also had someone for all the monster animations, because the animations also take a lot of time if it's 2D sprite animations. So it's again more people than it looks like in full-time equivalents.
So what I hear there is I guess the way I thought about hiring and bringing people on the team recently was more like only bring people on the team if they're better at something that you need. And you're saying it was a bit different for you. You also like that was maybe the case, but the main thought was also just to keep the development cycle short. Or how did you think about those freelance hires?
The freelancers, like there are some skills we obviously do not have, like sound design and composing music. Yeah. So that's a no-brainer to hire someone. Fair. And it's also a relative no-brainer to not hire a full-time sound designer at Bippinbits, because we don't have a way to keep them busy all the time. So that's a natural freelance position. And then for the people I hired full-time at Bippinbits, these are very capable people, quite senior, who can fill multiple roles, who usually have a really, really strong suit in one area, but can also do like 2 other areas. Like our first proper hire, Rafa, he's a great tech artist first, but he's also a great 2D artist, and he's also a really good engineer, and he can also create and cut great trailers like he did with PVKK.
That was a fantastic trailer. I watched it for the first time on Steam a couple of days ago, and my level of intrigue went up by a lot after watching it. Yeah, we did the basically storyboarding and iteration on it together, but he recorded everything. He worked his ass off to make it look good and have some assets polished in game, and then also cut it and cut it in the right way that it's engaging. And then our sound designer for PVKK did the sound pass and had this like initial sort of rhythmic button pushing and pressing and such. So these are the hires for Bippinbits, more generalists where I feel confident that across our project we will always have plenty of work for them, and we are never sitting there like, we don't really know what you can do today. Because that's a big problem with hiring people, is you need to keep them busy, right? Otherwise you're losing money.
We
hire somebody
also
full time.
Yeah, we did also hire 2 other like specialty roles where we are not generalists. One is internal QA, because QA can save you so much time as a programmer or developer in general. If you can just let someone else test the build and then you fix it maybe, and let someone else check if the fix actually works, that can be really, really, really useful. Or you get community reports, and just reproducing the issue sometimes can take hours, right? Yeah. And if you have someone who can do that, like, and just give you a perfect description of how you can reproduce it, a video, screenshots, it might take you 5 minutes to fix this. So.
And across all projects, that happens so often that a full-time position is worth it for that, basically.
Yeah. It's still a little bit tricky, because sometimes we have like, this week we don't really have anything for you. And then another week we have like 2 games in parallel needing QA. Like that's...
but that's how it is with every job. It's like... Yeah. There are calm times and not so calm times.
Yeah, and we also have a concept artist who's basically making concepts and also creating 2D assets. So, but real drawings that are not basically digital drawings.
So how are you looking at this entire company growth? Are you looking at it like from a business perspective and are like, this is a good investment of resources, or are you looking at it from the perspective of this allows me to do more of the cool things I want to do? Or what's your approach behind it?
My goal is to keep the teams as small as possible, basically, which is not visible if I'm talking about this like this. I do really value small teams of great people. I think that's the most fun way to work, and also where you basically can make the most out of the least resources. Because you can make a game with 4 people that's about as successful as a game made by 30 people, for example, if it focuses on the right things. And having a successful game in turn means for us, we can be really relaxed about the future. We can do nice stuff that like, for example, with PVKK. So the success with Dome allowed us to take really creative risks with PVKK. I'm not sure if we had outside funding for PVKK, if we would have gotten away with choosing such a strange name, because it's not the safe option. The safe option would be something else. But we were like, it's a small game. We are making fun, and we can allow this ourselves. So that definitely helps. And in terms of the growth, like the growth was basically purely coming from me wanting to make more games. I do have so many games I want to make, and I've always looked for ways to make more games. And then at the beginning of this year, we had 6 games in parallel in development. So and then it was clear. Okay, yes, that's quite a lot. So it's good if we can scale it down a little bit. Now we have 4 games, and in September, after September, we will have only 3 games, I hope, in development.
Okay.
So we bring it down a bit. And the thing is, like one game that we haven't announced properly, I make that game just with a bunch of freelancers. There's no one from Bippinbits. Oh, that's not true anymore. Like Anna, my wife, she's making art for that game also. Because like the other game didn't need her anymore, or still does need her, but this new game is more important. It's a little bit different, but it's essentially a second team that's independent of the team that works on PVKK. And the people who work on Dome right now, they are totally independent of the PVKK team. So it's very much split.
So you have basically a bunch of mini teams working on different projects.
Yeah, I think so. The most realistic summary of this is we have 4 teams with 4 people each. That
sounds awesome.
Roughly fits it. Yeah, it's super fun, but it's also a lot, and especially something like with Gamescom, we suddenly have there's a lot going on.
Yeah, and also has your role shifted to like people management, or what do you do for the projects?
I still do mostly the thing I did before, and I still do the things I want to do, which is I'm still directing all the games. I'm still doing high-level game design, narrative. I don't program anything anymore in the newer projects. On Domekeeper, I did still most of the programming. And also in the game design, I'm like, for example, if in Thronefall, you have the high-level systems you designed, but then you also have this like individual enemy, or you have designed a few enemies, but then it's, okay, should this enemy have 50 HP or 100 HP? And this needs to be tested and balanced and such. And that's a thing I'm not doing anymore right now.
Okay.
There's a big limitation to this approach, which is a little bit sad, is that juniors don't really work well in this setup, because it's a high ownership, high skill position that is totally self-managed, that's fully remote, and that's not a good environment for juniors. And I need this way, because otherwise I couldn't do it for 4 games. If I need to manage like the individuals super well. But so the people who work on these teams, they are really skilled and experienced and know what they are doing. And I generally also like for people to take more ownership and more responsibility in the project, Like I gave this example with balancing this enemy, but like if someone is good in design, their involvement doesn't need to stop there. They can, in Thronefall term, or let's say in PVKK terms, it's not just about designing one enemy ship. It's designing whole missions or whole strings of missions or something like that. And I'm super happy also to give that away and just stay a little bit in the background, make sure it fits into the rest of the game, and guide it a little bit from the back, like bringing in some ideas and curbing some other ideas a little bit.
So all of the mini teams are relatively self-managed, basically. You don't have to set up team meetings for every single one or ensure that communication's working properly within these teams.
The teams are small enough that the people really speak with each other. And the amount of organization is roughly 2 hours of meeting per team a week. So we have a weekly meeting. And for a project like PVKK is now getting bigger. There I already have like 2 hours a week narrative meeting, and then 2 hours a week development meeting. And this adds up. But they are generally in the day-to-day, minute-to-minute, hour-to-hour work, they are super independent. They have their high-level goals and they can fill them really well.
That's interesting because that's something Paul and I always think about. Like if we were to scale Grizzly games, which we're not sure we want to do, but if we scale it at some point, then I think this mini teams approach sounds very appealing, because that way you can basically do what you're good at, right? You're good at developing stuff in small teams. You know how that works. Like those skills don't necessarily transfer to bigger teams. So the most sensible way to scale is to keep doing it in smaller teams and just have more small teams.
Yeah, I think so. From what I've heard also from other people is that you hit this barrier quite soon in teams of maybe 7, 8, 9 people. Suddenly you need layers. You need a lead programmer that manages the 2 or 3 other programmers, and you need this for everything. And then you are only speaking to the leads as a director and not to everyone anymore. And then you also have more complex interpersonal dynamics. Like a 4-person group, it's much easier for a 4-person group to get along well than it is for a 9-person group or 12-person group. So at least I think so. And the people the stories I've heard were of indie studios growing. Either they grew into bankruptcy or into unhappiness, usually. Like you have some that really worked out well. But then it's also that the owners of that studio, that their goal often was growth beyond. And their goal was not, hey, I want to make games. Because in a studio of 20, you're not necessarily making games anymore unless you hire someone else to take over a lot of like CEO and management things.
Yeah, that's why I was asking, because I've heard a lot of stories of people who then essentially became people management jobs. They used to make games, but now they do only people management, like 24/7, and like work overtime already. And that doesn't seem to be the case with how you have structured things.
Yeah. For me, it works, and I feel like it's an easy trap to fall into, because you meet great people and then feel like, oh yeah, this person, if we could hire them, they would improve the team and we could make cooler games with them. Yeah. And you have that 5 times and suddenly your company is growing and growing. So there's a risk in that. And also suddenly this pressure of this next game, like if you have a 15-person team and you work on a game for 3 years, you need to pull in a different league of numbers than if you are 3 people. Obviously, like you need to earn 5 times the money. And earning 5 times the money with a similar game.
Yeah.
It's hard.
I see. So you've also kind of distributed the risk, because you have multiple things going. If one fails, it's maybe not the end of the world. For people like Paul and me who are potentially interested in this model, what would you say would be the best way to start such a mini team? If we're like, okay, we want to go from having 1 project to 2, how should we do that?
So you of course need people to make this then, right? So the first question is, how do you find great people that fit with you? And one decent way, which is I think a very robust way, is to work with freelancers who, for example, where they are based and what language they speak, if that's relevant, who you would consider also hiring as a full-time employee later on. And then you can work with them as a freelancer for half a year. And if you feel like, yeah, we are vibing really well and they are doing great work and they will be super useful to have around full-time, that's an easy hire. Okay. And yeah, so that's robust. But I did also hire just over LinkedIn, for example, or like these open positions. And I did hire really amazing people there, but also people I needed to let go after a short time. It's much harder to hire, or it's not necessarily harder. It just means like you have a false positive rate that because you you didn't validate the people to the same degree as if you worked with them half a year, right?
Yeah,
or
I see.
Maybe not the people, but the working relationship with them, because it's always two sides, right?
So you have to basically the two strategies: either you validate first through working with them on a couple of projects, or you have to accept the false positives and deal with them when they happen.
Yeah. And with the classical hiring, I really value also doing tests, like programming tests, design, live programming, design tests. And what I struggled most with is hiring for positions that I have no expertise in. Like that's super tricky. Like if I wanted to hire a biz dev person, it would be really hard for me to vet what makes, like, do a test if this person is good in biz dev. Like that's tough.
ChatGPT, write a test, and then they use ChatGPT to answer the test. Yeah, checkmate.
Yeah, that's actually nowadays a problem too. Like with written tests, people will use ChatGPT, and badly used chatbots, you instantly recognize them, and they don't make a lot of sense also in design. It's not necessarily bad for them. Like if they use a chatbot in a smart way, the test could still be representative to their real work, because I hope that would carry over. That they would also use it in a smart way in their work to polish a text they've written into nice or readable English or German.
We need to find people, and I think one of the difficult problems that I would be thinking there is you basically, ideally you want generalists, like, or people who are good at multiple things. Isn't it very hard to find generalists who are not already working on their own game in there? Yeah. Like, like everybody who's good at making indie games is already making indie games. This is sort of the dilemma then. You have there, right?
Absolutely. Like that was also my thinking. And like the perfect profile of a person, they are already working on their game because they are perfectly equipped to make their own game. But among the people that work on in the Bippinbits game projects, there are people who do that, who could very well make their own game, and often they made their own games or are making some smaller games on the side, and that's also fine. And generally, being able to make games does not mean you necessarily want to make your own games commercially and try to make this work. Yeah, because you also have this. If you run it as a business, it can also be. You also have the unpleasant business parts that you maybe do not want at all. And if you can find someone who's a passionate game maker, doesn't want to do business, is very fairly compensated, and you do a profit share with them, for example, for your project number 2. And they get ownership and they carry the vision that you have for the game. I think you can have people that are put into a spot where they feel they are making the game they really want to make, and have a safe net. They don't carry like the business risk, but still have a lot of basically say in what game gets created.
Okay, so essentially you just get them by making them a compelling offer that they actually find attractive.
Yeah. It's also often that one example is the game we recently started, the not fully announced game. That was a prototype from us from 2 years ago. We made a 1-week game jam where we made this, and then we didn't touch it anymore. But then these 2 amazing game makers that we know in our network, were basically looking for freelance work. And then I was not looking for, okay, I want to make this big game that I know will work. So now I need to staff this project. I was more like, okay, we have these 2 people. What project do I have in basically my back catalog that would fit these 2 people really well? Like skill-wise and mood-wise and such. And then I suggested it to them and they liked it. And yeah, since then they've been working on this. So it's more of like I said before, sometimes you need to find a project right for the people and not try to have a project and then staff it with someone. Yep. But also, it depends also on your project. You don't necessarily need to find these amazing generalists. You can also, for example, if you get someone who does all of the programming and is smart and looks left and right and is not like a machine that turns your voice lines into code, but who understands the project and takes ownership of the quality and such. Like you would already save so much time. And if you do that with that part, and then you have QA maybe, or that can also be external QA. But using QA saves you also a lot of time. And only these 2 things could enable you personally already to make 2 games in parallel, potentially.
Do you have employees with revenue share? Like one thing that I was itching to ask. Yeah, you do.
Yeah, that's it's actually not revenue share; it's profit share.
Profit share. Yeah,
I did want to set up revenue share, but then it's a complicated thing. So that's best checked by lawyers on both sides, and both lawyers were saying, yeah, let's not do revenue share; let's do profit share. Which was really surprising to me because I felt like revenue share is the better deal for the employee. But also the lawyer of the employee side said, yeah, let's rather do profit share.
Okay. Interesting. And basically the idea is to make an attractive deal for people who could otherwise also just make their own game.
Yeah, for me, the reasoning is if I have a small team and I'm giving them a lot of ownership and a lot of responsibility also, and my expectation for them is to be like this self-contained powerhouse of game making. And they are carrying the vision forward and putting their best into this. It does make a ton of sense that they also profit if the game is doing well. Like that, that only seems fair and right.
Do you think it's a viable model as an indie developer if you have resources to basically like swallow other small indie teams? And like, okay, you need funding. Do you want to maybe work in Grizzly Games from now on? You can be your own self-contained team, and we do like revenue share or something. And just
that's interesting.
Or how do you?
How do you mean swallow? Do you buy them? Are they then basically owned company?
I'm not sure that's necessary, right? They can, if they have previous IP and so on, they can still maintain ownership over that. I mean more like just hire them in the configuration they're currently in, and be like, you can keep working together. You can even come up with your own ideas. Maybe we'll probably want to say have a bit of a say in that. Sure, right? Yeah, fair enough. But largely speaking, I think the idea we have is more like that we set up the processes and not so much that we even dictate the ideas of what specifically like these teams have to make.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting proposition to basically take a team that's already working together well, that's already kind of complete and covering all the fields. The question then is,
why would they want to do it?
Yeah, so if they are successful, they will not do it. Like if I would ask you, hey, do you want to be a Bippinbits team, you and Paul? You would say no, I'll make my own games, and that makes sense. Even though I definitely would. Like
honestly, there is a universe where that would happen because like if like all of the Orga and BizDev stuff gets too annoying. We'll give you a call.
Okay, I'll come back to that. Yeah, the question is, okay, if this team is good enough to make commercially viable games, why they are not doing this, or why did their games flop? Do they just need this little bit of guidance that you can give them for this to work out? Or is there a deeper problem somewhere? Like that's a tricky part. And usually I think
you need to find people where you're like, I can fix them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love that. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. It's a strange conversation to have. Like, I know you are amazing developers, but you're not achieving anything. but I can be your savior. Like that's a little bit strange.
And you know what's even more awkward than if it turns out that you were wrong. This happened to me a couple of times where it was like to people I know, hey, let me help you make a YouTube video. I know how to make them do better, and then they just flopped as well. Like, okay, I guess I don't know how to make this do well. Oops.
Yeah, it's complicated stuff. It comes back to what I said before. Like we cannot predict which prototype will do well. We have to put it out and test it. But I think even I can imagine like a team that has this potential. If their usual mode is to just decide for a project and then work on it for 3 years and then release it, and this doesn't work out. If you can bring in this sort of structured approach that helps them validate and also cancel games that are not showing this promise, I think that could probably work.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Is like you basically force people into a workflow that produces good outcomes.
Yeah, it also does mean everyone needs to be willing to waste years of work potentially across multiple projects. I mean, you need to be willing to cancel a game after half a year of work if you see it's not really working out.
But I think there's a reason for why you say that happens very rarely, and that is that if you set up the process correctly, the early validation points already catch most of the failure cases. So late validation point failures honestly mean that your early validation points weren't good enough. So if your early validation points are good enough, and then you ensure that you don't misalign the project in the time that you have between the next validation point, then I guess the next one should theoretically pass as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think the early ones filter out most of the games already. And then if you do everything right, you will not get bad surprises. There is one aspect though that sometimes making games is also really hard. And then it can be that the prototype worked, but now you really, really struggle to bring it to the next level, to make it a full game. And the team has a really hard time to do it. And suddenly the demo doesn't really work out because it kind of got bloated, lost the point a little bit. I think that can easily happen. And we do have one project where it right now feels like that it's really way more complicated than we thought. Moving from prototype to full game.
All right. Yeah. And I guess it's a bit of a hard situation to be in than to also basically kill somebody else's project that somebody else invested more time in than you did.
So if you kill it, you also should have funded it. And then it's their time, but they still got paid for the work. Yeah. And the payment should be good enough that the payment in itself was worthwhile, and it was not the promise of maybe a success eventually down the road that kept them working.
Yeah, so, no, that is a horrible way to do business. Yeah.
Some studios work like that. They pay really low wages and promise, okay, if the game goes big, you get something, or if the company gets sold, you get something. But until then, you earn a really low wage. That does happen, and I don't want to value this. It depends if it's okay for the people working there. The key thing is that I think both parties should only start a project with the acceptance that if the validation does not go well enough, we will cancel this. If the validation is middling, we will shorten it. And then ideally also the people, like at least for me, it's the case. If I'm making a prototype that I really love, then I release it and no one wants to play it, I also lose the interest in continuing this, because I know I could make it. I could make it a game I like, but I still would like other people to play this game. Okay. It doesn't like if I have the choice between making a cool game that 1 million people play and a cool game that 100 people play, I would rather do the first, obviously. And ideas are cheap, and you can make so many prototypes and concepts, and if it takes a week to make a prototype, you can do a lot in half a year.
Yeah, I mean, sounds compelling to have multiple projects and to switch into more of a high-level design guidance role. But it sounds also risky that your job transforms into something different. But still, super interesting perspective.
We will learn in a year or so if this actually works. because right now we have a lot of promise in a lot of things, but so far we only released Domekeeper, right? So there's still a lot of proof to be made that this can work.
Yeah, so you're still essentially in trial mode, but I think I've heard of some bigger studios that do this as well. Like, if I'm not entirely wrong, there's some mobile companies like Supercell that used to work like this with like super small, cracked teams that like work on different projects. But obviously, it's something. I think it's something quite different to do it with indie games, and I don't think there are a lot of people doing this with indie games. I think you're one of the first people I know of that are doing this with indie games. So this is an interesting experiment for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Supercell and all the mobile game makers, they are generally looking for the $1 billion game, right? So
they need to put a lot of fishing rods out there and see what sticks, basically.
Yeah, and it's not enough that this game will bring back its money. Like, they want 1,000 times the money it costs to make. So it's a different scale. And for me, it's just, okay, I want to make, my key motivation is to make games, and the business side needs to work so I can keep making games. That's a very different proposition than, okay, we have these shareholders and we should do 10% more revenue this year to make our shareholders happy and rich. Like that's a very different setup than I think indie devs generally have.
Yeah, I agree. Also, it's also cool that basically the reason you're doing it is so you can just make more games. If you want to win some more sympathy points before we wrap this up, you should also mention that you work in the Godot game engine with most of the projects, probably. It's actually also, we love Godot for one key reason, I think. So the most important bit is iteration speed. Like, it's the quality I value most for making good games. How fast can you iterate? And Godot is really, really good at fast iteration. Like, a lot of the things go really fast that, for example, in Unity, you're not used to this going so fast, like just launching your game or changing code while the game is running and having that immediately affect the game. Like, you don't need to compile. So I've dabbled with Godot a little bit, and I found it much more enjoyable to use than Unity. Like, it's like, it feels more reactive, and it's just like, not like every time you do something you have a 5-second loading bar. It's like
and also, like, these 5-second loading bars, they are really killing me because I'm not sure if it's what it is, but if I'm not constantly under fire, I'm incredibly quickly distracted. So if I would need to wait 10 seconds every time the game boots, the chances are high that in these 10 seconds, I will open the browser, do something else, or look at my smartphone or something like that.
Of course.
And that's really also not just, like, it doesn't sound horrible, 10 seconds of waiting time, but it does kill my productivity.
It does. Yeah, it does make a very, very big, it does make a surprisingly big difference. Like, even, I would say even very, very small delays can make a very big difference. Like, even a couple of milliseconds when you click on something and it needs to load in the background or something. That's you feel all of that. And
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. But problem I think for me is that I'm very, very used to the Unity workflows, and that I have my tools that I like in Unity. There's some very cool tech that we maybe want to use for the next games that's only compatible with Unity, and all those kind of issues. But like, from the sideline, I'm rooting for Godot, and I'm like, come on, take them down.
Nice. But in the end, it's still, it quotes, just a tool. So it's not a lifestyle. It's a tool that helps us making games, and whatever you use to be productive and make games is fine if it works for you. So it's not like I think sometimes this whole discussion is a little bit overblown. Like the console wars. If you like one, you have to hate the other. Stuff like that.
I think ideally, that, like, we live in a pretty good world where there are basically different options, right? There's no established monopoly, and I think the competition is really what drives progress usually. Like the better Godot gets, the more Unity will try to catch up, and so on.
Yeah. I wonder how it is for Unity. I read once upon a time that most of their revenue comes from mobile games, and that that would also like, unless Godot suddenly gets strong on mobile, like the indie game development might always be a second thought there, like a second, not top priority. But for Godot, I feel like it's really different. It's obviously like these Steam games, 2D or 3D, that are in the focus of this, for what this engine is made, even though it's a general purpose engine.
How is Godot with like bigger game projects? Does like the speed scale to bigger projects, or like how much load time do you have when you open up PVKK?
It's not too bad. It's a little bit more than on Domekeeper, but not super, not very significantly. Like there are some things that change your, like how fast does your game launch? Like initially it will only take a few milliseconds, maybe a few hundred milliseconds. But even for Dome, it's like 3-4 seconds or something like that, because like viewport instantiation seems to be a culprit of always adding 2 seconds. And so, but yeah, it for PVKK, it's not noticeably worse than for Domekeeper, for example.
So we're talking 10 seconds, maybe something like that.
Yeah, I mean, from pressing the button to the game being up, it's not even 10 seconds. It's like 4 seconds. So it's nice. And you can also just reload a lot of stuff while the game is running. And that's always a nice thing.
Yeah, I'll keep my eyes on Godot for sure.
I'm happy also if the engine does well. We are also sponsoring it, so it can hopefully stay around. That's one benefit also in Godot. Like if you have a really nice game that is commercially very viable, like Domekeeper or PVKK, for the Unity ecosystem, it doesn't matter. But for the Godot community, it's a big thing. Like if a game is really successful, because there are not hundreds or thousands of super successful games. So there's a lot of support coming from the community for this, and a lot of friendliness. That's really nice.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's like made with Godot is something you can say pretty proudly for sure. Yeah.
And people put it on their games with a reason. Like they like it, and we do too. Like we put it also on our games.
Nice. Yeah, cool. I mean, there are more cans we could open up, but I think it's let's wrap it up.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for your time. I'll put links to your games in the description and so on.
Sure. Yeah, thank you for inviting me. It was a lot of fun to finally sit down and talk to you with for a good time with some calm, because we met a few times at several like conferences, but we didn't have a ton of time to really talk deeply about something.
Yeah, I think it was very, very fascinating to firstly like truly understand how your process of finding and validating game ideas works, but also like the business side. Like both things were very, very truly insightful for me. So
thank you.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for hosting me.